Okay, after Miss Sheila's done blowing her nose, I'll ask Brother Mike to open up in prayer. So, hey, if your son can do it, I can do it. All right, Brother Mike. Who all was here Wednesday night? Raise your hand. I wasn't here, so my hand's down. I was sick, so that's my excuse. All right. Did you hear, if you didn't watch it or come here, did you hear what Kelly said about me? Wow. I told my wife I'm going to download that, and I'm going to cut it, and I'm going to put it on my phone. I'm going to play it, the part where he said, be more like Grant. That's wildly out of context, okay? But I'm going to play it to my wife every time we get in an argument. But then I thought maybe I should just make it like a text message whenever she texts me. It could make that sound. But anyway, he was talking about me helping him with things, which I'm not going to tell you what type of things, because then you might want me to help you. No, I help him with computer problems. Thankfully, those aren't that much, and thankfully he has a wonderful wife who is very savvy and intelligent, who's able to fix things herself. She knows how to use Google, which is really all I ever do. So, but anyway, it was funny. My kids came home to tell me, but I had spoiled the surprise by watching the service. So. All right, so we're in Proverbs, and we're in chapter 24. And a lot of this stuff is getting repetitive. I know that. And a lot of times, yeah, we do. We know that. But we always try to re-emphasize because, you can always glean more things from it. And if you don't know what glean means, it means you can get a little bit extra and a little bit extra and a little bit extra. I mean, Kelly's been reading Proverbs since he was a kid. I think his dad made him do it. I've only been reading Proverbs regularly, one chapter a day. So like today, what's 20? Is this the 11th? So you read, chapter 11, and because there's 31 chapters in Proverbs. So you see stuff, and it's the whole gist of Proverbs is be smart, be wise, be good, seek God. So, and this will benefit you, and if you don't, bad stuff's going to happen to you. So it does, in some ways it's repetitive, but so why am I saying that? I'm not saying it to obviously be critical of God. I'm saying it because this might go a little bit quicker. It might not. I don't know. I'm probably just going to go, if I get that far, I'll go to the end of chapter 24 and stop wherever that puts us. But I've also been watching the dispensation series that Kelly did 4 years ago on YouTube. So we've got a few playlists on our channel. If you search for Steve Hensley or Lighthouse Baptist, well, there's a lot of Lighthouse Baptist Church, but I think if you search for Steve Hensley, you can find our channel if you have interest. I've been listening to those during my work day. When I'm, I usually start them in the morning when I'm tired and listen to Kelly's soothing voice. But so he's got 44 episodes, and I was getting to the end of those. anyway, I forgot my point there. I wasn't trying to brag or anything. Trust me, it's. But it's interesting, you learn different things, and you go back through it, and after being around Kelly for so long, I have a pretty decent idea of dispensationalism. But when you look at the New Testament, you can you can divide it into these little pieces, and so you understand. Oh, this is to the Jews. It's not really to us. There might be some application to us and whatnot. So there's always more you can get out of whatever it is we're studying. One of the things I learned this week was that Ezra started the synagogues. I've known Jews go to synagogue. That's what they call it. Like we go to church. They go to synagogue. But I didn't know Ezra started the synagogues. So I thought that was interesting. But all right, enough babbling aside. Let's talk about verse 17 and 18. Rejoice not. I know I already hit this. I talked about it several times actually. Rejoice not when thine enemy falleth, and let thine heart be glad when he stumbleth, lest the Lord see it and it displease him, and he turn away his wrath from him. We shouldn't take pleasure in the misfortunes of others. There's a saying, misery loves company. And you're not supposed to be that way. But that's kind of our flesh lots of times. So people are envious and they don't like people getting ahead of them or doing better than them. That's just their natural nature. And that's something that we as Christians need to fight against. Some people it's easier than others. Their temperament is a little bit different. My temperament is not very kind-hearted towards other people, but it's a lot more than it used to be. If somebody here asks me for help, I will help them, and I'm not going to be grudging about it, because God has changed me that much. When I was a kid, I always like, how much does it pay? That was my attitude. Of course, in my defense, you had to buy everything back then. I got presents twice a year. Now, kids I bought something for my son just yesterday. I was grumbling the whole time, but I did it. So we need to have a spirit of love. And, we've had some disasters in this country recently. Hurricane Helene was really bad. And there's still people there who are suffering, who don't have places to live. And it can get cold in North Carolina. It got cold in South Carolina when I was there. So you don't want to be outside. So there's those people who are suffering. And then there's the people in Los Angeles. And that can be more challenging because I'm not a good person naturally, and they tend to, be people I don't identify with as much. But, we still need to pray for them. And, some people, I saw people on the left who were happy that James Woods' house burned down. And he's a conservative actor that's conservative. Okay, you don't need to know who he is. They were just so happy because he's a conservative and he says stuff on Twitter and turns out his house didn't actually burn down. So, now they get to feel stupid. I mean, it's kind of an example of this in action. They were taking pleasure in James Woods' house burning down. I'm gleeful, just so happy. Like, this is karma, baby. And then he goes back to his neighborhood, and his house is one of the very few that are standing. So, if for no other reason than you want your enemies to suffer more, we should be, calm and not take pleasure in somebody suffering, because God really does not like that. All right, moving on. Verse 19 and 20. Fret not thyself because of evil men, neither be thou envious at the wicked. For there shall be no reward to the evil man. The candle of the wicked shall be put out. When I was younger, Bill Clinton got elected. I was very upset about that. I was pretty involved in politics. How old was I? That was 92, right? So I was probably 16 then. So 15 or 16. I was very upset about it. I did not like that guy. But I shouldn't be upset about that. I was upset, and it affected me very negatively. My dad was not nearly as upset. He had had Jimmy Carter for president. So, we have to trust God when these people are elevated, and a lot of times they get elevated and then they get torn down. Bill Clinton has definitely had some tribulations. Would you say he's torn down? Well, maybe not yet, but it will be, will be soon, because, there's eternal judgment for these people. Whatever we go through in our life is short. Like, I was lamenting a little bit that, other people, I'm getting more like my dad as I get older, lamenting that other people get to have these cars that, and I'm like, I could have those cars if I wanted to. I just, it would hurt me too much to spend that amount of money. But I also recognize this life is short, and then I'll go to heaven, I'll be happy. I won't be regretting, I didn't have a supercharged, Cadillac CTS coupe. Daniel. I won't be regretting that. And honestly, I think if I prayed for that regularly, God would probably help make it happen. But I'm not going to, because it's just not that important. It's something I want, but it's just not that important. There's all these other things that are more important, like my, children, where they go to school, and, trying to, as much as I can, get them on the right path, and just other things in life, other things to expend money on, always it's better to spend more money on missions, the faith promise offering. Those things are more important. So now we have Joe Biden, okay? And contrary to what people might think, he never was a good guy. You can go back in history and look at the things he's done, and he's never been a good guy. He's always been wrong. Wrong on every foreign policy decision, or just a corrupt person. Lies. Had 2 presidential campaigns derailed due to lies. Anyway, he gets to be president, but what a hollow thing that is for him, because then he gets stabbed in the back later on. So he's up here, but then, he might be leaving, but he's thought poorly of even by the Democrats. So there's this, we got to be really careful to ever think that people are wicked are just rewarded, because they're not. There's frequently things in this life, and there's always the penalties in the eternity. So we need to focus on God rewards us for good. It may not be today, it may not be tomorrow, but he will reward us because he's faithful. Really, I need my daughters in here to listen to this. But alas, they're not here. So verse 21, 22, My son, fear thou the Lord and the king, and meddle not with them that are given to change. For their calamity shall rise suddenly, and who knoweth the ruin of them both? Okay, so fear the Lord, right? And as I said, yes, there's the regular fear a little bit, but really, it's respect, reverence, kind of like you should fear your parents. I am okay with my kids fearing me, which would, set everybody in a tizzy. I don't want them to be like afraid to come talk to me about something, but I want them to respect me, as an authority, as somebody who's not going to accept bad behavior, swearing and things like that. I want that because I think that's right. Now, I'm sure I have gone too far on that side. I'm not really good with the whole variable adjustment. But we're supposed to fear the Lord, but we're also supposed to fear the king. So that might be a little bit harder, right? We don't have a king, but we do have a president. So, we can have our opinions, but we have to be careful. Now, do I think the stuff that I said just now was disrespectful? I don't think so, because we're also told to, call out the wolves and things like that. And so we have to acknowledge the facts, right? But if Joe Biden was here, I wouldn't yell at him, okay? That's just not what I as a Christian would do, because, he is president. And that's an authority. God, I don't think the 2020 elections were completely above board. That's my personal opinion. But you know what? God put him in charge. So I have to be careful there. It's David when he was fleeing from Saul, and then he had the opportunity to kill Saul when Saul was in the cave. And all his men were like, kill him. You won't have to flee anymore. And then David was like, no, I'm not going to kill him. And so he cut off the hem of his garment, and how quiet was that? Anyway, but then he even felt bad about that. So I don't think you're ever going to be wrong to be respectful. And I think that's is my personal opinion. You can have a different interpretation if you like, but I think it's better to be safe than sorry on things like this. Do you need to go on social media and bash the authorities? I don't post anything on social media. There are definitely cases where you can critique, but I think it's important to be respectful, because if you're disrespecting somebody that God has put in power, you're also a little bit disrespecting God, because he made that decision. It was obvious with 2020, right? Donald Trump was a shoo-in, and then we had COVID, and election laws were being changed, mail-in ballots like crazy, and there's still like 2 million. Don't want to, get into conspiracy theory. This is church, but there was still an excess of voters in 2020 compared to 2024, a large disparity. But God did that. I firmly believe it. I believed it in 2020. I didn't know why. Now I think I see why a little bit. 4 years later, you're like, oh, well, okay then. All right, so the second part of that verse is, meddle not with them that are given to change. People who are, change is like perverted, but it doesn't necessarily mean that here. People that are going to cause trouble. We saw with January 6th, they painted people with a very broad brush. And if you didn't get arrested, lots of people lost their jobs. It was, and it still is a massive injustice. There were people who were rioting, but then there were also, it's believed, there were instigators in the riots. Stay away from things like this. I mean, there does come a time where you have to take a stand for right, but it is dangerous. You don't. In verse 22, it says, "Their calamity shall rise suddenly, and who knoweth the run of them?" So, if you're next to somebody who maybe he's powerful and he's an agitator, and you believe what he's doing is right, well, you'd better have a very strong belief in that, because he might fall suddenly. Whether it's just or unjust, that could happen. Now, if you're okay with that, you've made peace with this is the right thing to do, this is what God approves of, then that's fine. You're willing to pay that price. But don't think just because you're on the side of right that you're not going to suffer some hardship. So really, a lot of this stuff goes back to God wants us to be wise as a serpent, wise as serpents and harmless as doves. We need to count the cost. Verse 23, "These things also belong to the wise. It is not good to have respect of persons in judgment." Okay? So this is what our country is founded on, but guess what? This is not how most countries are, even England. Justice should be blind and equal. The justice system has been very warped in many ways. Thankfully, the good thing about the justice system, it's not a monolith. Okay, so it might be messed up in Washington, D.C., but it's not necessarily messed up here. Not that it's perfect, because they're run by men. But that's one of the great things about this country is it's hard to destroy us because we're not just a single unit. We're not that monolith I talk about. So because we're 50 separate states, there is a federal government that has a lot of power, but states still do have a lot of power themselves. And so it's hard for the forces of evil to completely undermine our country. And I think that's because God gave the founders a lot of wisdom. They knew the dangers and they wanted to avoid them. I'm not an expert in other countries' legal or parliament or legislative or parliamentary democratic makeup, but we're the only one that's designed the way we are. Most countries have a parliament and they don't have a Bill of Rights. And they certainly don't have freedom of speech. Okay? As far as I know, we're the only country that has codified into our Constitution freedom of speech. In England, they're putting people in jail, no joke. One guy got 4 years for making a social media post complaining about some stuff. It's crazy. So God doesn't like us to say, oh, this person's rich, or this person, he would never do that because he's an upstanding individual, right? We're supposed to look at things and judge it based on the merits. He that saith unto the wicked, thou art righteous, him shall the people curse, nations shall abhor him. I heard somebody say this when my wife and I were at breakfast one time. I don't remember why. I don't remember somebody worked at this restaurant. I don't know what was going on, but he made the comment of it's an upside down world. And when I was little, I remember reading about calling good bad and bad good. And I was like, that's interesting. But now, we have exactly that. And thankfully, we're pushing back pretty hard against that. So Lord willing, of course, that's why we do the Friday night prayer thing, that will continue, and we can stop, or at least push back a lot of the evil that's been put forward in our country. Thou art, the example just this week was, I should have more biblical examples, I'm sorry. But the example this week, current events, is Joe Biden giving the Medal of Freedom to all these horrible people. I mean, George Soros, really? I don't believe everything I read from either side. But I finally, after hearing about George Soros for years, did a little research on him. And no, he's not a good person. Not if you're I don't like to say, not if you're an American, but like if you believe this country and you believe in the Constitution and that we're a great country, like you can't, like, I don't know how you would reconcile giving the Medal of Freedom to George Soros, who's been trying to destroy and undermine the fabric of our society. One of the things they've been electing prosecutors at local levels, and that's why one of the reasons why you have these crazy cases being prosecuted, because these guys are being funded to do exactly that. And that undermines, when the good people in America are being treated worse, far worse than the actual criminals who are doing horrible deeds, well, that's an upside down world. And that's what God was talking about. Now, I mean, we look at that stuff and we go, well, surely the end is near. And maybe it is, but maybe it isn't. It's like I said, maybe we push this evil back and there's another 2,000 years. We don't know, and that's why we need to be ready every day, because we can't tell the day at the end. I bring this up because I know people I know some people personally who for a period of time was like, well, I'm not gonna do anything or advance my life or whatever, because Jesus is coming back. But God doesn't. Okay, I have learned in my life, God doesn't want me to just assume things are happening. He wants me to continue just living on faith and trusting Him to provide. And that's why I don't have a bunker. It's also why I don't have like a massive retirement account or anything like that. I'm just trusting God to provide. So, but to them that rebuke him shall be a delight, and a good blessing shall come up upon them. So, whether you get that reward now, it's good for you to rebuke the evil. Okay, that takes courage. If it feels like we've turned a corner, okay, people have woken up, people are fighting back against evil, and it's insidious. It was just like, little leaven leaveneth the whole bunch, but it was just spreading through society, and some of the damage is, with our young people and the trans stuff. I mean, I know 3 people indirectly now. I'm not like friends with them, but I know 3 people who are trans, okay? I don't know if anybody's done any, mutilation yet, but I know 3 of them. I probably know more. I worked with 2. Well, one was at my job So that was a fourth person. And then another one I worked with another company. I mean, 5 young people. I mean, that's a cancer. That is horrible. So it's important to factually point this stuff out. But we always want to do things prayerfully, thoughtfully, and understand the costs involved. All right, verse 26, every man shall kiss his lips that giveth a right answer. So that's a cultural thing, but that's just, they will praise them. And I think we're seeing more and more of that. The people who, for the past few years especially, have been fighting things, fighting the trans movement or whatever, and we obviously appreciate the people in our church who have been, who fight against that stuff. I used to not understand what the big deal was, but it's the same thing. It's insidious. It creeps in. And next thing you know, you got people in the church who are, holding up a book that's not the Bible, and they're saying, this person says this, and I think this is right, because this, it feels right. That's why I hate talking about feelings so much, because feelings will take you the wrong way so fast. All right, verse 27, prepare thy work without, and make it fit for thyself in the field, and afterwards build thine house. So this is count the cost. Prepare thy work without, outside. Get it ready, plan, make it fit for thyself in the field, and then build the house, okay? So this is good advice. Don't go and buy a house without having a job or something, it's just kind of common sense stuff, That being said, there's times where you're like, okay, I'm going to be a missionary. I think it was Praying Hyde. Was he the one that had the orphanage? Okay. What? George Mueller. Oh, okay. Praying Hyde actually did damage to himself because he prayed so much. But George Mueller, thank you. His prayers were so powerful that God provided without him asking for others to help. Now, that being said, having other people help is good and fine and appropriate, whether it's tangible help or praying help or hopefully both. That's good. But so there's a difference between trusting in God and just trusting. Okay, trusting in nothing is not a good way to move forward in your life. If you don't know what you're doing, but you're taking some steps and you're praying to God and saying, Lord, help me make these steps successfully. I believe this is what you want me to do. And if it's not, help show me a different way, being very humble, submissive. And that, God really likes that. But he doesn't like it when you just assume. And that's kind of where maybe I'm dumb. Probably I'm a guy, so I'm a little denser, I confess. But there's a big difference between between trusting God and trusting in nothing. But when people say, "Oh, it'll be fine, everything will work itself out right," well, even for the unsaved, frequently that's true because God is very kind and good, and but it's not necessarily true. And it's really easy to look at things in just one, get tunnel vision and say, I have cancer, and then somebody says, it'll work itself out, it'll be fine, God will provide, or whatever. And then somebody dies, and it's like, oh, well, you don't know what God will do, but it will be fine in the end for the Christian because of Romans 8:28. All right. Talking more than I expected. I always do. 1 Samuel 13. This is Saul. So let's see if I can get there. 1 Samuel. This is Saul making a horrible, horrible mistake. Failing to realize the consequences of his actions. Failing to count the cost. And failing to prepare. So there is a battle. And then in verse 8, Saul, he's waiting for Samuel, and he tarried 7 days, so he waited 7 days, according to the set time that Samuel had appointed. But Samuel came not to Gilgal, and the people were scattered from him. And Saul said, bring hither a burnt offering to me, and peace offerings. And he offered the burnt offering. And it came to pass that as soon as he made an end of offering the burnt offering, behold, Samuel came. And Saul went out to meet him, that he might salute him. And Samuel said, what hast thou done? And Saul said, because I saw that the people were scattered from me, and that thou camest not within the days appointed, and that the Philistines gathereth themselves together at Michmash. Therefore, said I, the Philistines will come down now upon me to Gilgal, and I have not made supplication unto the Lord. I forced myself, therefore, and offered a burnt offering. And Samuel said to Saul, thou hast done foolishly. Thou hast not kept the commandment of the Lord thy God, which he commanded thee. For now would the Lord have established thy kingdom upon Israel forever. But now thy kingdom shall not continue. The Lord hath sought him a man after his own heart, and the Lord hath commanded him to be captain over his people, because thou hast not kept that which the Lord commanded thee. So Saul made a really bad mistake here. He was a king. He wasn't a priest. You don't get to just go offer sacrifices, and he knew better. So it's important to understand. This is why we study the Word, we read the Bible, we come to church. It's important to understand when you get to, take certain positions or whatever. Like, a woman doesn't get to usurp her husband's authority in the family just because she's, a Christian. It doesn't mean she shouldn't try to do if her husband's unsaved. That doesn't mean she shouldn't try to take her kids to church and stuff like that, but she doesn't get to overtake that authority. This is just an example. Because she's a Christian, because she knows God and she's doing what's right and things like that. God has very specific lines you're not supposed to cross. And if the husband is there, then he still has a position, and he will be held accountable if he doesn't fulfill that position. It's fine for the woman to work and provide and do whatever that her husband's not doing, but she doesn't get to take over and become the actual authority. And I know for some people that could be offensive if you're personally in that type of a situation. You could be angered. And I'm not judging anybody. I'm just saying that's not going to be a God. God will not bless that. You still have to respect. You still have to allow that him, because if you totally take over, guess what a guy will do? He will just totally fade out. I have to remind myself this with work and stuff. If somebody's not doing something quick enough or fast enough or good enough or whatever, if I take over that, they will do nothing. They will never grow. And so I've had to be really, and so Saul took upon him something that he shouldn't have done. He was not ready for the cost. And if you continue reading through Samuel, you'll see Saul ended up wounded and killing himself so that he wouldn't be captured. So that's why prayer daily, throughout the day, regularly, constantly, keeping a short sin account. I mean, I think I probably sin as much or more than anybody in here. I sin a lot, and I'm not proud of that. But one of the things I do is I keep a short sin account. I try, because I don't want anything to hinder my relationship with God. So yeah, I guess with that, I'll pray and we'll be dismissed. Dear Lord, I thank you for bringing us here today. I just thank you for just the men and the women who are able to serve in this church. And I thank you for everybody who's able to come and worship you and just hear the teachings and preachings. I just pray blessings on those who are not able to be here for sickness. Daniel, I know, very faithful, and so I just pray you would keep that sickness far away from the church, and I pray you would heal them quickly, Lord. And just pray for this blessing on the services today, and just really appreciate how you lift us up, Lord. We just help us to always be thankful for how you're always there and you never leave us nor forsake us, Lord. Pray these